This is More Than Money with Mapalo Makhu, brought to you by Sasfin Wealth.
Welcome to More Than Money. I'm Mapalo Makhu, a personal finance columnist, and I love having money conversations that change people's perspective about finances. Why am I doing this podcast, you might ask? To talk about money. Not the paper stuff. I mean the baggage, the feeling, the emotional, heart-wrenching stuff. We find this conversation so uncomfortable to have, which is why on this podcast, I have decided to have this very difficult conversations. We are going to have some difficult discussions because better money conversations lead to better money confidence, and healthy money dialogue leads to healthy money decisions. Today, I am joined by Johan Gouws, and he is the head of advice at Sasfin Wealth. Johan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much. Great privilege.
So you are head of advice. You are normally the one dishing out advice to different people, to your clients. But today, we're going to have the conversation that people are very uncomfortable having about how you view money, how you use money, and how you feel about money. So I think my first question is, growing up, what was your perception of money?
I would say I grew up in the kind of like middle class Afrikaans home where there was lots of rules about certain things and do's and don'ts and what of that. I think I just generally felt that money, again, like we know, is not really spoken about a lot. But the general sense that you got was my dad was the one with the budget and my mom was the one that felt like it was a target.
Yes.
So the two didn't always gel that well. The money was always there, but every now and again you would sense that there is limits, to what we can and can't do.
Yes.
And I think that just kind of like created a healthy sense of just kind of like respect money.
I like that you viewed it as having a healthy sense of respecting money, because I find often a lot of people just don't have respect for money. What is respecting money? How would you define respecting money?
You see, money itself has no power, but we give money its power, and we give it its power in the sense how we think about it, how we use it, how we spend it, what we spend it on, how we sometimes use it to influence those around us. That's why the saying goes, it's not money that's the problem, it's the love of money or the fear of money that is the problem and that drives some of the behavior that then gets you into financial troubles.
Looking at your life, what have been some of your decisions that were driven by fear that you think to yourself now, like, oh goodness, maybe I shouldn't have done that?
Well, let's go back to the financial crisis, 1998. There's a difference between investing and speculating. Let me say now with hindsight that I was not investing, I was speculating. Because anything that you were investing was actually going up just before the crash happened, right? There's a certain amount of your money that you should speculate with. And let's say that's 10%.
Yes.
Well, I was
Very
going
small
way
portion.
beyond 10%. And that really hit me quite hard. And the kind of emotions I was going through at the time, and that fear and that nauseating feeling, about, what have I done, as you say, that really stands out for me as that one big event in my life.
So at that time, maybe just put it into picture for us. What was happening in your life? Were you married? Did you already have kids? And of course, this financial decision that you had made was going to affect your family.
Yeah.
Was it easy for you to tell your wife?
It was early in our marriage. I think she could sense it. That is how much I felt it and how she could most probably pick it up. And I had to tell her, this is what's happened.
Yes.
I think the fortunate thing is it's not like it was total financial devastation,
Yes,
but still,
it was still
it was a good
significant
time.
enough.
It was a good time in my life to actually learn that lesson, because the sooner in life you learn these lessons and you pick up on some of the not so good financial behaviors, the better, because later in life, you run out of the luxury of making big mistakes.
Yes. And have you always spoken about money with your wife? Maybe just take us back to when you started dating. And all of us, we're in love and you think, goodness, we're just going to take care of one another. Did you start having money conversations, or were you aware of your partner's behavior around money?
First of all, we started dating in matric. So it goes quite a way back. And she came from a similar type of, middle class background. But we really only started having money discussions most probably when we were well into our marriage.
Yes.
And to this day, what I've realized is that it is so important to have that discussion. I also get involved with some financial courses that I present for couples, people that's about to get married. And I talk to them about their money personalities and how different they are. And then for them to become aware of some of the behavioral kind of, let's say, fault lines,
and differences,
and how they should try and complement each other,
yes,
and have these discussions about where they can be honest and say, listen, I'm not so good in this area when it comes to finances. And in the end, it's about this team thing. So specifically in a relationship, having these conversations are extremely powerful, and long gone are the days where the male in the house runs the show. I mean, most of the time, I think it's actually the females that's actually better at running the finances in the house.
But how do you start that conversation? Because, like you mentioned, you come from different backgrounds, maybe similar, but just in terms of how you grow up in different households, that has an impact on you. Do you have a moment where you sit down with your partner and say, hey, let us talk about money today? How do you start that conversation, or how did you specifically start that conversation in your marriage?
First of all, you shouldn't start having these discussions only when there's a crisis, right? That's too late. And then you can cause more damage, and even permanent damage in a relationship, because then it's trust that goes out the window, and from there, things become much more complicated. So I think it was early in our marriage. We both had income, so the money was there to do what we had to do. So there wasn't big decisions that we had to discuss. But as time went on and the kids came along and there's another car and this and that and a bigger house, and then you had to start planning together about, what can we afford, what can't we afford. And I think having the discussion about what might the future look like, the two of you have to travel on this journey together. It doesn't help I go and sit and draw up a budget without speaking to her, not understanding what her needs are, what she still wants to achieve. And then at some point you find out there's a total disconnect, and but you're not sticking to our plan, but it's not our plan, it's my plan. So you need to start just kind of like working together as a unit as early as possible. And it's really, for me, starts with that budget. It sounds so stupid, but it really is as practical as that, because a budget helps you to understand where you are and what you can spend and what you can't spend. And it provides you something to come back to and just check where you still are.
Yeah. When I think about couples talking about money, I always say it's very good to sit down with your partner and say, hey, these are my goals. Because one thing you mentioned, you might have your own goals that your partner will look back and say, but Johan, I didn't know that was your goal. I thought we were going in this direction. So having that conversation is very important to avoid any surprises along the way.
Exactly. That's just the point. There should be no surprises. Same as when I always say to my manager, listen, I just try and not give you surprises, Then I think
and I'm sure your clients don't want surprises either.
Yeah, I know, absolutely, So it's really making an effort to understand the other person's point of view when it comes to money, what money means to them, because money means different things to different people, right? To the one, it can mean status and freedom. To the other one, it could be security or self-fulfillment. And that will determine what value they place on money, what priority money has, and what items in their life has priority in terms of what they want to spend it on. And if that understanding is not there, there will always be this tension between the two parties of, what's important for you is not necessarily important for me.
But were you aligned with your wife from the get-go? For her, money means X, and for you, money means X. Were you aligned from the get-go to say, okay, actually, money means the same thing?
I can't really say that we went through that process, but you pick things up. When you start spending money, and she is the one that says, listen, can we afford this? Or, geez, I feel bad when I spend money. Then you go, all right, so I get a little bit more of an understanding. And now I can tell you that she is the one that will most probably the one that will say, we should really just think twice about spending this money, right? And she finds it difficult to spend money on herself as well. You know, a lot of guys out there will say, listen,
Like,
hey, what's the problem?
What are you
but
complaining
I
about?
really, you know, in the end, we're a team, and I want her to feel like she can buy what she
Enjoy
needs.
herself,
and express herself as an
Yes.
individual out there. And so,
And what is money for you? What does it mean?
for me, money is more than just a mechanism of exchange. Money is something that touches your emotions. It's something that speaks about your values.
Yeah.
It is the means by which you can achieve and spend your time on the reason for why you were put on earth. To get to a point where you can really achieve your full potential as an individual and make a difference in the lives of others.
Yeah.
You know, so that's where it comes back to this whole idea of stewardship, where stewardship says that you have been given money, or you have money in your hands, and that money is not necessarily yours. It's the responsibility is to find out what you should be doing with that money to live your life purpose.
What would you say is your life purpose?
So far, I would say it's to look after my family,
Yes.
to help us as a family unit to achieve our purpose as a unit, and then also to set up my girls, you know, for them to have a good base to live their life to the best of their abilities and give them the opportunities to do that. And then also to then hopefully make a difference to the people around you know, because it isn't just about you and money.
Yes.
It's about, you know, how it also touches the people around you.
You are listening to More Than Money, a podcast collaboration brought to you by Sasfin Wealth. At Sasfin Wealth, we empower our clients to reach their global investment goals, to retire with dignity, and to leave a lasting legacy. If you would like to have real money conversations, visit sasfin.com/wealth and talk to us. Enjoy the rest of the podcast.
One thing you mentioned earlier is that you sometimes do coaching for couples who are about to get married, and perhaps those who are married as well. What are some of the themes you have seen, especially for those who are newlyweds, when they finally realize that, oh goodness, this money business carries a lot of emotion?
I think the theme usually is that there's surprises. Suddenly something happens and the partner just finds out that we were not really in the financial situation that I thought we were. We're not as comfortable as I thought we were. Many times that happens actually when there's a divorce, when they actually have to start splitting up everything. Then typically the wife who's been looking after the kids then finds out that we don't really have much to fall back on.
In a mess,
right?
Yes.
There's then that breakdown of trust, and then it is so difficult to get back from there, because we know that money is the cause of many marriages breaking up. And it really comes back to, again, understanding what money means to the other person, understanding their money history.
Yes.
We've got to understand where people are coming from. Maybe during their formative years there was really a bad experience with money, which makes them extremely uncomfortable and make them behave in a certain way that maybe the other person starts thinking about who are you
person?
and
Yes.
who did I marry? But you've got to go and understand it and go and meet that person there.
Yeah.
But you've got to create that space to have that discussion. So you have to create
a safe space. Yeah.
Right.
I know it's easier to say create a safe space, but if you are literally at breakdown and perhaps someone sees you and says, maybe just go see Johan, how do you even get your partner to go with you?
Well, I think the first thing is that in many cases, two parties will not be able to solve it between themselves. I'm not saying your financial advisor should play marriage counselor as well, because I think a financial advisor is just about everything for most people. But I would just say, listen, maybe go and speak to somebody that you trust. I know you don't trust me at the moment, maybe, but go and speak to somebody you can trust and just see if they've got any suggestions of how we can take this forward, if they know somebody. So maybe give that partner the opportunity to go and select who you will then go and engage with to try and get over this hurdle.
Yes. Do you remember a time when you got your first paycheck? So let's take it all the way back.
Many years.
Many years ago. Do you remember what you did with your first paycheck?
I cannot say exactly what I did with my first paycheck, but the one lesson that I've always taken with me through my whole life is that you've got to pay yourself first.
What does that practically
What it means
mean?
is that before you start spending the money on all the stuff that you want rather than you need, because there's a big differentiation. What you need versus what you want.
Yes. We have a lot of wants.
Is important. And most of our budgets won't meet the wants list. Address your needs. Make sure that you also then put money away for yourself.
Yes.
To give yourself the financial security and the freedom one day when
so
you
give
do
me an
retire.
example. I earn 10,000. What should I be doing? At least. What does paying myself first look like?
So remember, this is part of a cycle or the different stages of your life, right? So, for example, in the first 2 years of your life, you maybe have car payments, you maybe have rent, you have, had to buy data and contracts and all that kind of stuff. And stuff that you need just to be able to earn a living, right?
Yes.
And to get your career going, all that. So at that stage in your life, it might be that you could only save 5% of your 10,000, and that's okay.
Yes.
Because it is about creating a habit. And that 500 Rand, when it goes to 11,000 Rand, so you've got a 10% increase, must then go to 550 Rand. And you could just continue with that.
Yes.
But the fact is, if that 550 is not there, you can't spend it because you kind of you can use, typically what most people should do is use a debit order. When that salary goes in, the first thing that must go off, the first debit order must be that saving, right? So if you're part of a company where you're part of a retirement fund scheme, usually they will already deduct it automatically.
And how many times do people say, I want the company to pay me in my account, I will do it myself?
No.
And how many people actually don't do that?
Won't happen. And if you're not, then you can typically invest in something like a retirement annuity. But these are the kind of things you can discuss with your financial advisor. What's your options? And there's so much on the internet that you can go and search for somebody that's just starting out and what's the most cost-effective kind of way to start putting money away.
What are some of the habits that you have built outside of paying yourself first that you feel have stood you in a perfect place?
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to big money decisions, big items, you make sure that you do your homework properly. You give it time. There's very few times in life where you have to make a decision right there and then.
Yes.
Give it time. Get as much information as you can about whatever you need to do. Speak to other people. And again, this is where a financial advisor is so important because they can give you more information. They're more objective. They're less emotionally involved with your money and all of that. And sometimes they can even tell you it's a good idea to buy a car or not, right? But then you have to respect the answer. But get the information. Speak to other people. Take your time. Don't push something. You will always hear me talking about value for money. I'm not saying cheap. I'm saying value for money. Whatever Rand you're going to spend.
What is the
See
return
what's the
on
best
this
you can
thing?
get. Value, how long that whatever you buy will last, what you will be able to get as return in the use of that item.
Yeah. Talking about big purchases, you can do all the homework. And let's say you go view this house and your emotions just completely take over.
Yeah.
This is the home that I need to be in. You sign that offer to purchase. Has it ever happened to you, or you have always been very astute?
Listen, I also went through stages of my life where I wanted to have the nice car and all of this. And yes, you're right. You see this house and it's like, wow, you can start
your kids
imagine
playing,
exactly
the pool,
yeah.
you cutting the grass.
What is so funny is that I'm now at that stage of my life. We've just downscaled, actually. I'm so less is more. But it's the stage of your life. And I love it when young people at work tells me about, this new house and all of that. And I'm going, oh, gee, you really want to do that? Okay, you have to, because that is
you
part of
You have to get
life.
it out of your system.
So the emotional part is very important because that's what we are. We are emotional human beings. And that's what makes us great, because that gives us our creativity and our ability to relate to others and have deep and meaningful relationships, right? But you must guard against emotions getting the better of you when it comes to your big money decisions. And again, that's why I say just step back, take time, speak to other people, get maybe more of an objective view, and look at alternatives. Many times people get themselves into a situation where it's like it's all or nothing. And it's not. It's not. Most answers in life is somewhere in between. And I'm not saying you should compromise always. Personally, I like to buy stuff of quality, but I wouldn't go and buy it to the nth degree. For my girls, they never had the best thing first, the latest iPhone or anything like that first. And to this day, they actually go and buy second-hand phones, Apple phones, if they want a phone.
And they work just perfectly
and they work perfectly.
Fine. Yeah.
You know, and I can rather spend more money on buying them data, because that is really what you need, because the phone itself can only do so much without data. So it's how you think about these things, and where does the value of that item really lies.
I love that, how you think about money. I've heard a saying that money is about the stories we tell ourselves. If you look back at your life, what is the money story you're telling yourself now versus when perhaps you started working, or even before you started working?
I would say that for me, the money story is that it starts with small things. And if you can do a few small things right over the whole of typically your active working life, your chances of having a good outcome is pretty good. So first of all, start with the paying yourself.
Yes.
And then start fine-tuning your financial habits. And as you go along and you start earning more and your ability to save increase and all of that, then, you keep on adjusting and fine-tuning that plan. And I tell you now, 20, 30 years down the line, you will not believe what you have been able to achieve.
Yeah.
And once you get to a certain level in terms of your financial wealth status, then it becomes a little bit easier. It doesn't work out like that in a straight line. So I think my story was that I didn't have this event in my life where suddenly I was getting a lot of money or that.
Yes.
It was really just, when I wiped my eyes, I was going like, geez, how did we actually get into a reasonably good financial position? And it was really just a few habits, trying to pay off our debt as soon as possible, not getting into debt that we couldn't afford or that we didn't need. Because the question is, how much is enough, right? And the answer is not a mathematical equation that you're going to work with.
Yes.
It really depends on what is enough for you as an individual.
And
what
what
do
are
you
your
want out of
priorities?
what is your priorities? What's your values? What do you want out of life? And what is enough for you?
For you. I always say that slow still wins the race. I think especially as the younger generation, we're thinking that, you know what, I'll have that big moment where, my investments return $1 million over. But truly putting in those good habits, pacing yourself, knowing what your priorities are, slow still wins the race.
Steady wins the race, absolutely. Just in the last while, I've just seen so many pictures where they just explain how taking these small steps, and you look back in 10 years' time and you go, but geez, did I really climb so high? Where somebody that tries and do that big jump right at the start, and maybe they don't even get past that first jump and they injure themselves. So really, start small. It will come.
All compounds.
It will absolutely. Don't get me going on compound growth, because that is the most powerful thing in the world, and
Absolutely.
I cannot explain it to you in words.
Yeah, so it's all the small good habits compound. And with that, thank you so much, Johan. It was such a pleasure talking to you and getting your perspective and getting the perspective of someone who works in the financial service industry, but realizing that you too are human and you've made these decisions to work for yourself.
Thank you very much.
This was a Sasfin Wealth podcast. Visit sasfin.com/wealth for more information.